Medicaid planning, special needs planning, and probate estate administration. She believes it is never too early or too late to start planning for your future. She is admitted to practice law in New York and Florida and is an active member of the executive committee of the New York State Bar Association Elder and Special Needs section. She also happens to be a wonderful member of the Mount Pleasant Master Networks chapter. So Lauren, take it away.
Thanks, Carrie. Carrie failed to mention that she and I have known each other since I was about 3 years old. I've danced with her daughters for many years, so I really do thank you for having me on, and thank you, Tim, as well. Congratulations, and thank you for everyone who's come today. So I don't want to bore you with anything too boring, but there's a lot of things that people can do and think about, especially as we start a new year, as to their estate plan. So I do have a PowerPoint. I'm not sure if someone can give me access to allow to share it.
I did.
Okay, great. All right. Can you see full screen? You can see the full screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So new year, new plan. I think we are all ready for a new year and probably ready for a new plan. One way to do that is to ensure that your estate plan is in order. So people typically get scared when I say estate planning. They think that that means they need to have a lot of money, they need to have a large estate, they need to have something like trusts, Rockefeller type money, things like that. That's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about things that you and I, people with families, people who work hard throughout their lives, can do to ensure that their assets go to the people that they want to receive them. And that if, God forbid, something happens to you during your life, you are in control, you're in the driver's seat as to who's handling those financial and physical, sometimes health decisions for you. My slide changed, right? Okay, great. So we're going to talk about some estate planning basics. So documents that everyone should have is a last will and testament, a revocable living, maybe a revocable living trust, a durable power of attorney, a healthcare proxy, a living will, and a HIPAA form. And I'm going to go through and explain what these documents are. So just a tidbit about me first is Enea, Scanlan and Sirignano is a family practice. My father started the law firm about 17 years ago. He's been practicing in elder law and trust and estates for over 30 years. And I'm a great example of a shoemaker's kid that goes without shoes. So we don't want people to be like that. We want you to have these documents. And some of you, if you've heard me present, have heard me tell the story about when my husband and I went on our honeymoon, and I'm sitting in the plane, we're on our way to Hawaii, and I turn to him and I go, Brian, I didn't do powers of attorney for us before we left. And he looks at me like I have 6 heads, like, why are you thinking about this right now? Why is that something that's important? And to me it is, because we're going on a long trip. We're newly married, we have financial assets, and if God forbid something happens to us, who's going to handle all of that? So I know that if it's things that I'm not thinking about actively all the time, that means that people who aren't in my position have the ability to have these documents at their fingertips may not be thinking about all the time as well, especially when you're so busy dealing with the rest of the world, with your own job, with your profession. So the first document we're going to talk about is a last will and testament. And a last will and testament is a document that allows you to indicate who you want to receive what from your estate. So you can name beneficiaries, and you can make sure that your wishes are carried out by the executor or a trustee that you appoint under those documents. So why is this important? Well, if you have assets in your name alone and you, God forbid, were to pass away and you did not have a will, essentially the law says who receives your money. So if you're married, your spouse may receive it. If you're married and you have children, it will be split 50-50 between your spouse and your children. If you're not married and you don't have children, it may go to another individual, such as a parent or a sibling. And that might not be what you want. Let's say that you have a spouse and children. You may not want your children to get 50% of your assets. You may want all of your money to go to your spouse. So it's important to have documents that correctly reflect what your wishes are. And another important part is to make sure that you've named people that can carry out those wishes for you, your executor, especially if you have minor children, including in a last will and testament, guardians for minor children, having trusts created for minors so that money doesn't go to any minor when they're young. Some people like to create trusts for children until age 25, sometimes 30, depending on maturity, so that money can be used for their benefit, but they don't get all of it at age 18 and go out and buy a Maserati. You can state who gets specific tangible property. You can make specific bequests. It's really a roadmap that allows you to, once again, be in control, sit in the driver's seat and make the decisions. I even a lot of times now have clients putting provisions for their pets in their wills, creating pet trusts. Pets are such a huge part of our lives, so ensuring that they're taken care of is also something that's important. So a revocable living trust is sort of like ancillary to a will. It's a way to avoid needing to utilize a will. Some people like to use this option because if you have assets in your name alone when you pass away that pass through your last will and testament, that means that a court proceeding needs to be commenced. So someone needs to be appointed, your executor needs to be appointed to marshal those assets, get control over them, and then distribute them to the beneficiaries. This can sometimes be a very expensive process. It can be a time-consuming process, especially with COVID. We've seen the courts shut down, a lot of delays. It makes it harder to get money quickly. So a revocable living trust is a way to avoid probate and quickly transfer assets to the beneficiaries. It's typically just changing the way bank accounts and assets are held, and it allows for flexible estate planning because you can easily state how you want your money to be distributed much easier than you can by having a joint bank account or a transfer on death, which would also avoid probate. So that's another important aspect, being a revocable living trust. And Carrie, I know that you said I had about 10-15 minutes, so just give me like a 5-minute warning or so when you want me to start wrapping up.
Sure. I'd say you got about 4 minutes or so to go.
Okay, great. So some other really important documents to talk about is a durable power of attorney. If there's anything that you take from my presentation today, it's the importance of this document. This document is something that allows another person to handle your financial decision-making for you. So if you cannot pay your bills, file your taxes, open bank accounts for yourself, if God forbid you were to become incapacitated, have a stroke, a traumatic brain injury, God forbid something happened, your power of attorney, if you've executed one, will allow an agent appointed to handle all of that for you. If you don't have a power of attorney, the only option is typically a guardianship, where the court is appointing someone to act as your guardian. It strips you of your own rights. It's expensive, it is a long process, and it's something that can be avoided by utilizing a power of attorney. I recommend having a power of attorney that's durable and has broad gifting powers in it. Another very important document is a healthcare proxy. I'm sure Carrie could talk to you about this as well. A healthcare proxy is a document that allows you to appoint someone to make medical decisions for you if you cannot make your own medical decisions. Legally, there's something called the Healthcare Decision-Making Act, which allows a relative to make decisions in a hospital or nursing care facility, but a healthcare proxy, again, puts you in the driver's seat, makes sure that the people you want to be making decisions are making them for you. Living will is another document that discusses healthcare decisions, specifically dealing with end-of-life treatment and life-sustaining treatment. Not legally binding in the state of New York, but also an important document to have. And then a authorization for release of health information, or a HIPAA form, allows your agent under your healthcare proxy to obtain copies of your medical records. So I know that this is a lot of information, but these are some basic documents that if you have not either executed them or spoken with an estate planning attorney to have them prepared for you, you may want to consider doing that. They give you peace of mind at the end of the day that you have documents that state what your wishes are. It allows you to ensure that you've reviewed your estate and your assets, made sure beneficiary designations are up to date, had someone review your account statements with you. A lot of times I have people come into my office and we review their beneficiary designations, regardless of whether they're recently married or have been married for 30 years. And if they purchased an insurance policy before they were married, a lot of the times their parents are still the beneficiaries on those policies or siblings. So making sure you're reviewing things. How do you start this? Well, get organized first. Create files, create folders, go through your accounts, make sure you have a list of what your assets are. If you have estate planning documents, you should review them and make sure that they still adequately reflect your wishes. If you do not, I'd recommend meeting with someone to go over what type of estate planning documents you should have. There's a lot of complex planning that could go into these documents, such as tax planning, if you have a potential taxable estate. If you are older or retired, or if you have parents that are looking to do long-term care planning, including plans for asset protection in case you need Medicaid, care at home, or care in a nursing home, are all things that can be done. So I know it's not the most fun thing to do, but especially now we have a lot of availability via Zoom to meet, not necessarily face-to-face, but through Zoom meetings in order to get the ball rolling. And I have found it, especially now with COVID, people are definitely looking to ensure things that they can control, they are trying to keep control over. So I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has or go over anything else.